He wasn't supposed to inherit anything, especially not a house that still remembered him. The letter arrives just after dawn, thin, formal, the kind of envelope that carries more weight than paper should, and Ethan Cole stands on the gravel shoulder of a forgotten road somewhere deep in northern Montana, boots dusted white, breath fogging in the cold, staring at a name he hasn't spoken in years, his grandmother's, written in careful, deliberate ink as if she knew this would be the last time it ever reached him. Beside him, Rex, a 6-year-old German shepherd with a sable coat, darkened along the spine and amber eyes that miss nothing, stands unnaturally still, ears forward, not scanning the woods like he usually does, but fixed on the iron gate ahead, rusted, half open, creaking softly in a wind that doesn't quite reach the trees, and beyond it, the mansion waits, large in a way that feels wrong, not grand but watchful, its windows dim, reflecting a sky the color of old steel, its structure too intact for a place supposedly abandoned for over 20 years. Ethan exhales slowly, folding the letter once, twice, sliding it into his jacket pocket, the fabric brushing against the cold metal of his dog tags, a familiar weight grounding him as something quieter, less familiar, settles beneath his ribs, the sense that this isn't inheritance, it's invitation, or worse, recognition. Stay close, he mutters, voice low, more instinct than command, and Rex shifts immediately, stepping in beside him, shoulder nearly touching his leg as they move forward together. Boots crunching over gravel that hasn't been disturbed in too long, each step echoing faintly against the stone facade ahead, the air carrying the scent of pine and something older, like wood sealed away from sunlight. The gate gives with a tired groan when Ethan pushes it, metal against metal, the sound lingering longer than it should, and for a moment, he pauses, not out of fear, but because the silence that follows feels too complete, like the world itself is holding its breath. They pass through, and the temperature seems to drop a few degrees, subtle but undeniable, enough that Ethan pulls his jacket tighter, while Rex lets out a low, almost inaudible rumble, not aggressive, not warning, just acknowledgement, as if the dog has stepped into a place he recognizes without understanding how. The path curves slightly, leading them toward the front door, and that's when Ethan notices it, faint at first, then unmistakable, a security camera mounted beneath the eaves, angled precisely toward the gate, its small red indicator blinking steadily. Alive, watching, and his jaw tightens just a fraction as the realization settles in. This place isn't dead, it's been waiting. Rex stops abruptly, muscles tense, gaze lifting not to the door, but to the windows above, tracking something unseen, and Ethan follows the line of sight, but there's nothing there, only his own reflection staring back, distorted in old glass, a man who thought he left certain things behind, now standing at the edge of something that never let him go. The wind shifts, brushing lightly against the front of the house, and with it comes a sound, soft, deliberate, the unmistakable click of a lock releasing somewhere inside, and before Ethan can reach for the handle, the door opens inward on its own, slow, controlled, as if guided by a hand he cannot see, revealing a darkened interior that doesn't feel empty, just patient. And for the first time since he read the letter, Ethan understands something with absolute clarity. This house didn't wait for just anyone. It waited for him. The air inside the house feels different, not stale, not abandoned, but held, like a breath that was never released, and Ethan pauses just past the threshold, boots resting on polished wood that carries no dust, no decay, only a faint scent of cedar and something cleaner, like the quiet aftermath of rain, and behind him the door closes without a sound, not slammed, not forced, just sealed, as if it has decided he is already where he is meant to be. Rex steps in beside him, slower now, each movement deliberate, his claws clicking softly against the floor before he stops again, head tilting slightly, ears shifting, listening to something beyond human reach, and Ethan watches him more than the room, because Rex has never been wrong, not once. Not in the field, not in the long nights when instinct meant the difference between walking forward and not walking at all. The foyer stretches ahead, wide and open, with a staircase curving upward like it belongs to another time, and along the walls hang framed photographs, too many, too carefully placed, and something about them pulls Ethan forward before he can think twice, his steps slow, measured, as his eyes begin to register what his mind does not yet accept: faces, places, moments frozen behind glass, and then he sees it, not all at once, but piece by piece, a photograph of a young woman standing on this very porch, smiling faintly, his grandmother, decades younger, and beside it another, and another, until the pattern emerges, not random memories, but records, timelines, documentation, and at the center of it all, appearing again and again, is a boy, small at first, no older than 6, standing in the yard, sitting on the steps, looking straight into the camera as if he knew it was there, and Ethan feels something tighten in his chest because he recognizes the jacket the boy is wearing, a faded denim coat with a tear along the sleeve, a tear he remembers, one he thought had been stitched up long ago and forgotten, and yet here it is, preserved, undeniable, and the boy is him. Rex lets out a low breath, not a growl, not a warning, just a sound of recognition, and he moves ahead, nose lowering toward the floor, tracing a path that does not exist to the eye but is clear to him, step by step, until he reaches the far wall where the photographs end and the wood paneling stands uninterrupted, smooth, unbroken, except for the way Rex presses his head lightly against it, then pulls back, then presses again, more firmly this time, his paw lifting, scratching once, twice, not frantic, not confused, but certain. Ethan follows, heart steady but heavier now, and runs his hand along the surface, feeling the grain, the seams, until his fingers catch on something barely there, a thin line, too precise to be natural, and he exhales slowly as he presses against it, testing, and for a moment nothing happens, and then the wall shifts, just enough to break the illusion, revealing a narrow seam that widens into a hidden door, opening inward with a soft mechanical sigh. The space beyond is darker, not unlit, but dim in a controlled way, like a room designed to be observed rather than occupied, and as Ethan steps inside, the air changes again, cooler, more sterile, carrying the faint hum of electricity, and then he sees them, rows of monitors mounted along the far wall, some powered down, others flickering with static, and at the center, one screen still alive, displaying a looping feed of the front gate, the gravel path, the place where he stood only minutes ago, and his reflection stares back at him again, not through glass this time, but through a lens that has been watching far longer than he has been aware. Rex stands at his side, body still, eyes fixed on the screen, and Ethan feels it settle fully now, the truth not as a sudden shock, but as a quiet, irreversible understanding. This house did not begin watching him when he arrived, it never stopped. The faint hum in the hidden room settles into a rhythm that feels almost deliberate, like a heartbeat too steady to ignore, and Ethan stands there for a moment longer than he intends, eyes fixed on the monitor replaying his arrival, the angle too precise, too intentional, capturing not just where he stood but how he hesitated, how Rex shifted beside him, as if whoever placed that camera knew exactly what to look for. He exhales slowly and steps closer, boots soft against the floor, scanning the rest of the room now with trained attention, taking in the details piece by piece, the metal desk positioned beneath the screens, the neatly stacked files arranged with care, not abandoned, not forgotten, but maintained, and that is what unsettles him most, not the presence of surveillance, but the absence of decay, because someone made sure this place stayed alive. Rex moves first, circling the desk, nose hovering just above the surface, inhaling quietly before stopping at a small rectangular device resting near the edge, something like an old recorder, and he nudges it once with his snout, then looks back at Ethan, not waiting, not questioning, just indicating, and Ethan understands. Reaching down to pick it up, the metal cool against his palm, heavier than it looks, as though it carries more than sound, he turns it over, finds the switch, and pauses for just a second, not out of fear, but because something in him already knows that whatever plays next will not be simple. Then he presses it, and for a brief moment there is only static, a soft hiss filling the room, until a voice cuts through, clear, composed, unmistakable. His grandmother's, but not the voice he remembers from holidays and quiet conversations. This one is steadier, sharper, the voice of someone who has spent years saying things that matter. If you are hearing this, then you came back, she says, each word measured, and Ethan feels the shift immediately, not surprise, not confusion, but recognition, like a puzzle piece sliding into place without effort. Rex sits down beside him, posture alert, ears forward, listening as if he understands every word. And Ethan does not interrupt, does not move. Just listens. I never expected you to remember this place. Her voice continues, softer now, but I knew you would find your way here eventually, and there is something in that sentence that lands heavier than the rest, because it suggests this was never about chance, never about inheritance, it was about timing. Ethan's gaze drifts back to the photographs in the other room, the boy he used to be, standing where he now stands. And the realization begins to form, slow and undeniable, that this house was never separate from his life. It was part of it, woven in long before he understood what it meant. The recording clicks briefly, then resumes. "You were not just being watched, Ethan," she says, and this time his name carries weight. "You were being kept safe," and his jaw tightens slightly, not in rejection, but in the quiet resistance of a man who has learned that safety often comes with a cost. Rex shifts closer, pressing lightly against his leg, grounding him, and Ethan lets out a slow breath, steadying himself as the voice continues. "There are people who will come looking for what is inside this house, but they are not here yet, and that is why you must listen carefully." And for the first time since entering the room, Ethan feels something sharpen inside him, not fear, not urgency, but purpose, the kind that does not announce itself loudly, but settles deep, undeniable. The monitor flickers again, the image of the gate looping endlessly, and in that quiet repetition, Ethan understands something else, something even simpler. This was never about discovering a secret, it was about inheriting it, and now, standing in a room that has known him longer than he remembers, with a dog who seems to trust this place more than he does, he realizes the truth has already begun to choose him. The recorder clicks softly as the voice fades, leaving behind a silence that feels heavier than before, not empty but full of something unresolved, and Ethan lowers the device slowly, his fingers tightening just slightly around its edges as the words settle deeper than he expects, not because they are shocking, but because they confirm something he has been sensing since the moment he stepped through the gate, that none of this is accidental, not the house, not the cameras, not even the memories he cannot fully place. Rex rises from his seated position without a sound, his posture shifting from stillness to quiet alertness, and he turns toward the far side of the room where a second door stands partially concealed behind a row of inactive monitors, his gaze fixed, unwavering, as though something beyond that barrier is calling to him in a language only he understands. Ethan notices immediately the subtle change in the dog's stance, the way his breathing steadies, the way his body aligns with purpose, and he follows without hesitation, moving across the room with measured steps, each one grounded, controlled, the instincts of years guiding him even here, even now. The door is not locked, at least not in any visible way, but when Ethan places his hand against it, he feels a faint vibration, like a current running just beneath the surface, and for a brief moment he hesitates, not out of fear, but because he recognizes the pattern, the layered design, the kind that requires more than force to open, it requires understanding. Rex steps closer, pressing his shoulder lightly against Ethan's leg, then lifting his head toward the handle, his nose brushing it once, twice, before he lets out a low breath, and in that small, deliberate action, Ethan realizes something he has overlooked. The door is not resisting him, it is waiting for a specific action, a specific sequence. His eyes drift down to the handle, to the faint markings along its edge, almost invisible unless you know where to look, and he runs his thumb across them slowly, tracing the pattern until it aligns with something familiar, something buried deep in memory, a rhythm, a sequence he learned long ago without realizing it would matter. And when he turns the handle this time, it yields, smooth and quiet, as if it has been expecting that exact touch. The room beyond is smaller, narrower, but more precise in its design, and the moment he steps inside, the lighting shifts automatically, soft illumination tracing the edges of the walls, revealing shelves lined with files, each one labeled in neat, consistent handwriting, dates, coordinates, names, and Ethan feels the weight of it immediately, not as information, but as intention, because this is not random storage, it is organized, curated, preserved. Rex moves ahead again, slower now, his nose hovering just above the floor before lifting toward a single shelf positioned at eye level, and he stops there, sitting down deliberately, his gaze fixed on one specific file, not scanning, not uncertain, but certain, and Ethan reaches for it without question, pulling it free with careful hands, the paper inside thicker than expected, heavier, as if it carries more than just ink. He opens it slowly, his eye scanning the first page, and the words settle in one line at a time, structured, official, undeniable, his name at the top, followed by a series of dates that stretch back further than he remembers, entries detailing movements, locations, observations, not of a stranger, but of him, from childhood into adulthood, and his breath stills just slightly as the realization deepens. This was not surveillance in the way he understands it, it was documentation, protection, preparation. Rex remains still beside him, but his ears shift subtly, picking up something Ethan cannot yet hear, and then it comes, faint but distinct, the sound of gravel shifting outside, not loud, not urgent, but new, and Ethan lifts his head slowly, eyes narrowing just a fraction as his focus returns to the present, because whatever this house has been waiting to reveal, it is no longer just watching him, something else has arrived. The sound outside does not repeat, and that is what makes it real, not an echo, not a memory of something long gone, but a presence, subtle and deliberate, and Ethan closes the file slowly, his thumb resting against the edge as if to hold the moment in place while his mind shifts gears, from discovery to awareness, from past to present, because whatever this house has been protecting is no longer just history. Rex is already moving. Not fast, not panicked, but precise, stepping toward the doorway they came through, his body low, controlled, every muscle aligned with purpose, and Ethan follows without a word, slipping the file under his arm as they move back through the narrow room and into the larger space beyond, the monitors still flickering softly, the looping image of the gate now carrying a different weight, because it is no longer just a recording, it is a reference. Ethan's eyes lock onto the active screen, scanning the frame, and there it is, a shape near the edge of the image, partially obscured by the angle, something that was not there before, something that does not belong to the stillness of this place, and he steps closer, narrowing his focus, the training in him sharpening every detail, the way the gravel has shifted, the faint outline of tire tracks cutting across the road just beyond the gate, fresh, recent, intentional. Rex lets out a low breath, barely audible, but enough, and he positions himself slightly ahead of Ethan, not blocking him, not restraining him, but aligning with him, ready, and Ethan places a steady hand on the dog's shoulder for just a second, grounding both of them in the same silent agreement. Whatever comes next, they face it together. The house around them remains quiet, almost indifferent, as if it has already played its part in bringing him here. And now it is waiting to see what he will do, and Ethan understands that, not as pressure, but as clarity, because this has never been about reacting, it has always been about choosing. He moves toward the main hall, steps measured, controlled, his senses widening to take in everything at once, the faint creak of wood settling, the distant whisper of wind against the outer walls, the subtle shift in light as clouds pass overhead, and beneath it all, the quiet certainty that he is no longer alone in this place. Rex pauses near the front of the house, head angled slightly toward the door, ears forward, listening, and Ethan stops beside him, not rushing, not forcing the moment, just observing, because sometimes the most important thing is not what you do, but what you notice. The handle on the front door remains still, but the air near it feels different, charged in a way that is almost imperceptible, and then, after a few seconds that stretch longer than they should, a shadow passes briefly across the frosted glass panel, not clear enough to identify, but enough to confirm what they both already know. Someone is out there. Rex shifts his weight, not aggressive, not tense, but ready, his presence steady, unwavering, and Ethan's expression remains calm, his breathing even, his posture relaxed in the way that only comes from experience, because whatever this is, it is not chaos, it is a moment, one that has been building long before he arrived. He reaches into his jacket slowly, not for a weapon, not for anything defensive, but for the folded letter he received that morning, and he looks at it for a brief second before slipping it back into place, as if acknowledging something unspoken. Then his gaze returns to the door, steady, focused, and he steps forward, closing the distance one measured step at a time. Rex moves with him, silent, aligned, and together they stop just a few feet from the entrance. The house behind them, the unknown ahead, and in that quiet space between what has been revealed and what is about to begin, Ethan understands something with complete certainty. This is not an interruption, this is the next part of the story his grandmother set in motion, and now, finally, it is his turn to answer it. The silence between Ethan and the door stretches just long enough to feel deliberate, not empty, not uncertain, but measured, like a pause placed exactly where it belongs, and then, without hurry, he reaches forward and opens it. The hinges move smoothly, too smoothly for something untouched by time, and the outside air slips in, cool and clean, carrying the scent of pine and distant earth, but layered beneath it is something else, something recent, the faint trace of movement that does not belong to the stillness of this place. Rex steps forward first, not crossing the threshold entirely, but enough to claim the space just beyond it, his head lifted, eyes scanning, ears catching every shift in the wind, and Ethan follows one step behind, his posture relaxed but precise, the kind of stillness that hides readiness rather than hesitation. The gravel path lies quiet again, the tire tracks more visible now in the angled light, cutting across the entrance in a way that suggests intention rather than accident, and Ethan studies them briefly, the depth, the spacing, the direction, his mind assembling details without effort, not to chase, not to pursue, but to understand. Rex moves slowly along the edge of the path, nose close to the ground, tracing the scent with controlled focus, then lifting his head toward the tree line, his body still, listening, and Ethan does not interrupt him, because this is where Rex leads, where instinct speaks louder than logic, and for a moment, everything narrows to that quiet exchange between man and dog, trust without question, alignment without words. The wind shifts again, brushing through the branches, and the sound carries lightly across the clearing, just enough to reveal movement where there should be none, a subtle disturbance at the edge of the trees, not visible in full, but present, and Ethan's gaze follows it, not reacting sharply, not forcing clarity, just observing, because whatever stands out there is not trying to hide completely, only to remain just beyond reach. Rex lets out a low breath, not a warning, not a challenge, but acknowledgement, and he steps back slightly. Returning to Ethan's side, his posture unchanged but his position clear, the focus has shifted from tracking to waiting. Ethan takes one more step forward, just enough to close the distance between himself and the open air, and he speaks, his voice calm, steady, carrying just far enough to be heard without force. You made it this far, you might as well step into the light, and the words settle into the space without echo, without urgency, simply offered, as if this moment has been expected on both sides. For a few seconds, nothing changes, and then the faint outline near the trees shifts, not retreating, not advancing quickly, but choosing, and a figure begins to emerge slowly from the edge of shadow into the filtered light, movements controlled, deliberate, revealing not threat, not chaos, but intention. Ethan does not move, does not reach for anything, his stance unchanged, because this is not confrontation, it is revelation, another layer unfolding exactly when it is meant to. And beside him, Rex remains still, his presence grounded, his attention locked, not on fear, but on truth. The house behind them stands silent, watching as it always has, and in that quiet balance between what is hidden and what is now stepping forward, Ethan understands something even more clearly than before. This moment is not about stopping what is coming, it is about recognizing it, because whatever his grandmother prepared him for was never meant to stay buried, it was meant to be faced. And now, standing at the threshold between the known and the unknown, with Rex steady at his side, Ethan does not feel unready, he feels exactly where he is supposed to be. The figure steps fully into the light, and for a moment, nothing about him feels unexpected, which is exactly what makes Ethan narrow his eyes just slightly, because the man does not move like someone lost, or confused, or even cautious. He moves like someone who has already been here in his mind, someone who understands the distance between each step, the angle of the ground, the quiet rhythm of the place. He is in his late 40s, maybe early 50s, wearing a dark jacket that has seen use, but not neglect, his posture straight, his gaze steady, and when he finally stops a few yards away, he does not look at the house, he looks directly at Ethan, as if the rest of the world has already been accounted for. Rex remains still, but his ears tilt forward, tracking every detail, not tense, not reactive, just deeply aware, and Ethan notices that, the absence of aggression, the lack of warning signals, which tells him something important before a single word is spoken. This is not a threat in the way most people would expect. The man exhales slowly, as though releasing a weight he has been carrying for longer than he intended, and then he speaks, his voice calm, measured, carrying a tone that suggests familiarity without claiming it outright. You look more like him than I expected, and the words land quietly, without force, but they carry enough meaning to shift the air between them. Ethan does not respond immediately, his expression unchanged, his stance grounded, because this is not a moment for reaction, it is a moment for listening, for observing what is said and what is not. Rex shifts slightly closer to Ethan, pressing just enough to remind him of the presence at his side, steady, unwavering, and Ethan lets out a slow breath before speaking, his voice even, controlled. You have been here before, and it is not a question. The man's lips curve faintly, not quite a smile, more like acknowledgement, and he nods once, subtle, precise. Long before you understood what this place was, he replies, and his eyes drift briefly toward the house, not with curiosity, but with recognition, like someone looking at a memory rather than a structure. The wind moves again, brushing lightly through the trees, and for a second, the world feels suspended between past and present, between what has been hidden and what is now unfolding. Ethan studies him carefully, not just the words, but the pauses between them, the way he stands, the way he breathes, and something begins to align, not fully. Not completely, but enough to form the outline of a truth that has been waiting beneath the surface. "My grandmother knew you," Ethan says quietly, and this time the man does not nod immediately. He holds the moment, letting it settle, before answering. "She trusted me once," and there is something in the way he says it that carries both weight and distance, like a bridge that no longer exists but is still remembered. Rex lets out a soft breath, his gaze shifting briefly toward the tree line and then back, as if confirming that this is the only presence that matters right now. And Ethan feels that too, the narrowing of the world to this single exchange. This single thread connecting everything that has led to this point. The man reaches slowly into his jacket, not abrupt, not concealed, and pulls out a folded piece of paper, worn at the edges, and holds it loosely at his side rather than offering it immediately, as if understanding that some things are not meant to be rushed. "She left more than a house," he says, his voice quieter now, not weaker, but more deliberate. "She left a choice," and Ethan's gaze drops briefly to the paper, then returns to the man's face, steady, unwavering. Because he already knows that whatever is written there is not information, it is confirmation. The house stands behind him, silent as ever, the cameras unseen but present, the past still watching, and Rex remains at his side, grounded, certain, and in that quiet space between what has been said and what is about to be revealed, Ethan understands something with complete clarity. This is not where the truth begins. It is where it decides what it will become. The paper in the man's hand does not move for several seconds, and in that stillness, Ethan understands something important. Whatever is written there is not meant to be handed over lightly, it is meant to be accepted, and that is a different kind of weight. Rex remains steady beside him, but his eyes flick once more toward the trees and then back again, confirming the perimeter, confirming that this moment belongs only to them. And Ethan takes one step forward, closing the distance just enough to make the space between them intentional rather than uncertain. The man watches him carefully, not guarded, not defensive, but aware, as if he has seen this moment play out in different ways before, and he finally extends the paper, slow and deliberate, giving Ethan time to choose whether to take it, and Ethan does, his fingers closing around it with the same control he has carried through every step since arriving. The paper feels older than it looks, edges worn, creases softened by time, and when he unfolds it, the ink is still sharp, still clear, written in the same careful hand as the letter he received that morning, his grandmother's, but the tone is different, not formal, not distant. This is personal, direct, meant only for him. His eyes move across the lines, taking in each word without rushing, and the message does not explain everything, it does not reveal every hidden piece, instead it does something more precise. It narrows the truth down to its core. If you are reading this, then you have already seen enough to understand that this house was never meant to keep secrets from you, only to keep them safe until you were ready. And Ethan's grip tightened slightly, not out of tension, but recognition, because that is exactly what this has felt like from the beginning, not a discovery, but a return. Rex shifts his weight just enough to brush against Ethan's leg, grounding him as he continues reading. There are people who will believe this place belongs to them. People who think they have been waiting longer, who think they understand what is hidden here, but they do not understand you. And Ethan's gaze lifts briefly from the page to the man standing in front of him, the connection not spoken, but present. The man does not interrupt, does not react, he simply stands there, allowing the words to do what they were meant to do. Ethan looks back down, finishing the final lines. "This was never about the house, and it was never about me. It was always about what you would choose when the moment came," and the sentence lingers in his mind even after he lowers the paper slightly, because it does not tell him what to do. It reminds him that the decision is his. The wind moves again, softer this time, carrying through the open doorway behind him, brushing lightly against the walls of the house as if stirring something old but patient, and Ethan exhales slowly, folding the paper once more with care. Not rushing, not hesitating, just acknowledging what it represents. Rex remains at his side, steady as ever, his presence unchanged, his trust unwavering, and Ethan places a hand briefly against his shoulder, a quiet gesture that says more than words. The man finally speaks again, his voice lower now, not pressing, not guiding. "She believed you would understand," and Ethan meets his gaze fully this time, not searching for answers, but recognizing something deeper, not trust exactly, but alignment. The sense that this man is not here to take anything, only to witness what comes next. the house stands behind Ethan, silent, its purpose fulfilled in ways that do not need to be explained, and the path ahead remains open, not marked, not defined, but waiting. Ethan glances once more at the folded paper in his hand, then back at the man, and in that quiet exchange, something settles, not a conclusion, but a decision forming, steady and certain, because the truth has already been revealed, and now all that remains is what he chooses to do with it. The moment does not announce itself, it settles quietly, like the last piece of a puzzle sliding into place without sound, and Ethan stands there with the folded paper resting lightly in his hand, not gripping it, not clinging to it, just holding it as something already understood rather than something still to be questioned. The man across from him does not move, does not press, does not expect, and in that absence of pressure, Ethan feels the clarity come, not sudden, not overwhelming, but steady, like a current that has been guiding him long before he noticed it. Rex shifts slightly at his side, leaning just enough for Ethan to feel the warmth through his jacket, grounding, constant, and Ethan places his hand briefly against the dog's neck, fingers resting in the thick fur as if anchoring himself to something real, something certain, before letting his hand fall again. The wind moves gently across the clearing, softer now, carrying with it the faint rustle of leaves and the quiet hum of a place that has already given everything it was meant to give, and Ethan turns slightly, his gaze drifting back toward the house, toward the open doorway, the silent windows, the structure that once felt like a mystery and now feels like a memory that has finally been returned to him. He studies it for a few seconds, not searching for more, not expecting anything new, just acknowledging what it has been, what it has done, and then he exhales slowly, the breath steady, controlled, the kind that marks the end of something rather than the beginning. When he looks back at the man, there is no hesitation left in his expression, only decision, quiet and complete, and he holds the man's gaze for a brief moment before speaking, his voice calm, even, carrying no weight beyond the truth of it. It was never about keeping it, and the words hang there, simple, unforced, but enough. The man nods once, not surprised, not relieved, just acknowledging what he already understood, and for a second, neither of them says anything else, because there is nothing more that needs to be explained. Rex steps forward slightly, then pauses, looking up at Ethan as if waiting, not for a command, but for confirmation, and Ethan gives it with the smallest shift of his posture, a subtle turn toward the path that leads away from the house, away from the gate, away from everything that has already been resolved. The paper remains in his hand for a moment longer, and then, without ceremony, without hesitation, he folds it once more and slips it into his jacket, not as something to protect, but as something already carried where it matters. The man watches him go, not following, not calling out, just standing where he is as Ethan and Rex begin to walk, their steps steady, unhurried, moving across the gravel path that no longer feels like an entrance, but like an exit that has been waiting all along. The house remains behind them, silent, unchanged, its windows reflecting the sky as if nothing has shifted at all. But Ethan knows better, not because anything inside it has changed, but because he has. Rex walks beside him, shoulder aligned with his leg, his presence constant, his gaze forward, and together they move past the gate, the metal creaking softly as it swings just enough to let them through before settling back into place. The road ahead stretches out, long and quiet, framed by trees that no longer feel like barriers but like witnesses, and Ethan does not look back, not because he is avoiding something, but because there is nothing left behind that needs to be revisited. The truth was never something to uncover completely, it was something to carry forward in the way he chooses to live, in the way he chooses to act, and as the distance between him and the house grows, that understanding settles deeper, not as a burden, but as something lighter, something clear. Rex glances up at him once, briefly, and Ethan meets his gaze for just a second before returning his eyes to the road ahead, and in that quiet exchange, there is no need for words, no need for explanation, because some stories do not end with answers, they end with direction, and as they walk into the open stretch of morning light, the world does not feel larger or smaller, it simply feels right. Exactly as it should be.